Alright, here we are for round two. We've lost a die roll this time. Our hand is okay. We have a Thoughtseize. If our opponent is playing something like Burn, our hand is a little bit weak because Thoughtseize is kind of a mulligan, but against most anything else it's actually pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and keep. We have Thoughtseize into Voice of Resurgence. Alright, so our opponent is playing Affinity. And Thoughtseize is, well, it's going to miss this Ravager. Well, Thoughtseize is potentially unable to do anything. Our opponent has basically, kind of like a nut draw. I think I probably do want to just play the Godless Shrine and Thoughtseize right away. Because we want to hit something like a Master of Ethereum or whatever other like real threat card that's actually in our opponent's hand. Affinity is very light and actual threats. Yeah, we'll take Plating. Alright, so our opponent has Signal Pest and a Darksteel Citadel left. So Pest and, hopefully not another Cranial Plating. So right now we're actually only taking 1 damage here, which is just, not terribly scary. We can go ahead and play a Voice. Voice here can at least get in the way of Arcbound Ravager. We're still going to take damage from Signal Pest, or rather from Ornithopter, but Voice can hop in front of Ravager. What is this, a Massive Ethereum or another Plating? Alright, second Plating. So our opponent's hand is the Stone Cold Nuts. Turn 1 Ravager, draw a second Plating. We are basically dead. I'm a little... Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and block the Ravager. If he wants, he can, sack artifacts to keep Ravager alive. That's going to make his Plating less powerful, though. And he just went to damage. We're going to play Voice. And we'll attack with our Voice token. And, we've basically lost this game already. Though we could draw a Lingering Souls. We'll basically have to path whatever the Cranial Plating is on. So, beginning of combat, path this. If we draw Lingering Souls, we're not totally dead yet. But right now, we have just 3 land in hand. So we take 1 damage. We can also draw a Pride Mage. Pride Mage is another card that actually has, a meaningful impact on the game. It's fine. And we drew land, we're dead. So our draw was both pretty bad and our opponent had, kind of an insane hand. Sideboard wise, we're going to bring in Stony Silence, we're going to bring in Zealous Persecution, we're going to bring in Slaughter Pact. And I'm actually going to, I think there's some argument to bring in Sorin. Sorin is interesting because it can allow you to race with, like a big hit with Sorin can potentially allow you to actually race even a very powerful draw from the opponent. Because if your opponent has like S Champion Cranial Plating, your actual guys do very little. So Voice of Resurgence in general is very weak in this matchup. This puts me in a ton of 4-drops in my deck, which I don't really like. But I think that this is like a reasonable card here. Also, just 2/2 flyers actually have some amount of value. So I kind of want to try this. Locksmith and Smiter is pretty weak overall. It doesn't really have a particularly big impact on the game. Most of their creatures just ignore your ground creatures, is why I like taking out the ones that aren't very high impact, like Rhino and Liege. These, are expensive, which can be, troublesome, but Liege can make your Lingering Souls big and your birds big, which does matter. Rhino, obviously the life gain is a pretty big deal. It can also trample over Etch Champion, whereas Voice of Resurgence and Smiter and Finks are all just like kind of these dopey dudes that don't really have high impact. So we're gonna go ahead and try this. So this is Affinity. I think is one of the relatively tough matchups for the Wiltleaf deck. At the Pro Tour, I played Fracturing Gust in my sideboard against with Affinity and Boggles. And I think that it's possible the deck wants to have a higher concentration of anti-Affinity sideboard cards. You know, you may need a bit more than currently in the deck. But okay, so we're gonna go ahead and play first. This hand has Pride Mage in it, which is pretty good. Doesn't have like Stony Silence or anything like that, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and try this hand. Having Pride Mage into Smiter, Liege, Sorin seems like it might be reasonable. I'm just gonna sack this now because I'm lazy and get green white land. That might be too slow, but kind of want to just try the Sorin here. It's a big part of why I decided to keep this hand, which is, you know, experimental to say the least. Ornithopter, Ornithopter. Okay. Well, nothing that we Zealous Persecution just yet. That's potentially a pretty good draw. We do have a way to kill a singular threat, which is, you know, something like a cranioplating or a trying to remember the name of these cards. Cranioplating or Master of Ethereum. This is a Steel Overseer. That one we can potentially just Zealous away. It's probably best to Zealous that now rather than use Pride Mage, because we retain our... Alright. Guessing you're not blocking. We're going to Zealous you. It's unfortunate that these are both Ornithopters and not like a Memnite or something. We don't want to get an activation of this and get actual big Ornithopters. So here... we are kind of big creature flooded, big spell flooded, which is a, you know, certainly a valid problem with the sideboarding strategy that we're trying right now. I kind of want to play Sorin and make a vampire next turn. If I draw land, maybe I just want to Wiltleaf Liege. Etched Champion. Alright, well we may need... well, Sorin doesn't really do anything against that. So we don't actually want to play Sorin at all next turn. The Etched Champion is a problem. Lingering Souls, okay. Oops. Well, Lingering Souls is a card that can do something even against an Etched Champion. And Etched Champion is one of the cards that, you know, gives you a significant incentive to have access to stuff like, cranioplating. Okay. Well, we do have the Pride Mage for the plating. We're taking 8 first, but I wish I'd had this earlier. I would have had a much better time of things. We're gonna Lingering Souls. And say go. Actually, we're gonna attack with this. Signal Pest, we have the Spirits to Contain at the moment. I hope it doesn't have a Master of Ethereum here off of that island. right now, you know, the ability to kill cranial plating is pretty reasonable. Leaves him not attacking me for very damage thanks to my spirits. Attacking me with anything but that. Alright, we'll kill cranial plating. I'll take 2, I go to 9. I'm kind of jammed up in mana here. Maybe I should have, no, I think that False Scourge, okay. It's actually kind of an awkward draw here. I think I just want to play Noble Hierarch and attack with 1 of my spirits. The problem is this can actually power up these pretty well. The spider doesn't actually do anything here. Lieges could be good, but aren't good right now. So I think I just want to play Hierarch and attack with 1 spirit. If he wants to, he can like trade like Nexus or something. But I guess he probably won't do that. Arcbound Ravager. Okay, well, now I'm dead. Because my hand is all a bunch of garbage. And you can just pile Ravager tokens on things. We didn't really draw very many cards that do anything in either of these games. I guess we do Persecution for this. I mean, like I said, Affinity is a pretty tough matchup. Just attacking with those. Okay. Well, we're going to block this. If he wants to go ahead and use his Ravager here to save his Signal Pest, like I'm fine with that. And wait, what's going on? Oh, is he activating that? Okay, he's just trying. He's using Arcbound Ravager on the Atch Champion. And pumping it a bunch of times with Ravager, so we're probably dead. I'm pretty sure he is lethal. And still Metalcraft afterwards. Is he for sure? Be 7. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he still does. Yeah. 5. 1 more. Yep. Yeah, I'm dead. So yeah, I mean the fact that I didn't draw any. I mean, I didn't draw any interaction earlier than this. Like I drew exactly the Persecution which I needed to use to kill the Steel Overseer. It's possible I need to mulligan more for hate cards. It's possible that my hand with just the Pride Mage and reasonable cards was not something that's realistic to actually try and keep in this matchup. But yeah, we're dead. I did want to try the Sorin. Turned out, just the expensive clunky card, not quite good enough. So we're gonna go and play. We're gonna play one more round. Overall, yeah, I think that Affinity is probably a deck that this list struggles with, and we see exactly why. So many we have so many just like sort of mid-range, relatively expensive cards that don't really do much to actually interact with what Affinity is actually doing. So they have various flyers and pro color things that you're not really putting them under a significant clock. Unlike a deck like Zoo, for instance, that can actually put the opponent under a meaningful clock with something like Tarmogoyf or Wild Nacatl, as well as have a lot of cheap interaction like Lightning Bolt and Path to Exile, to say nothing of cyber cards like Ancient Grudge. So this is not a matchup that I really want to play, and not terribly surprisingly, we were defeated. So anyway, I'm gonna go jump into another 2-player queue to get another round in, but we are not the winners of this tournament.